Masters, mistresses, the Doctor requires materials in order to maintain the TARDIS and ensure continued functionality. He similarly requires carbon-based comestibles to sustain his own biological functions and existence. Master would never say this, but he requires aid beyond that supplied by this unit in order to acquire these. To aid the Doctor in his various tasks and creations, this can be most effectively achieved via Patreon or Substack subscriptions, or through donations directly to PayPal. Or if you desire physical goods in return for your contributions, written accounts of my travels with the Doctor are also available on Amazon. Links are in the description below. Thank you, masters, mistresses.
Hi, Dr. Alex here, and welcome to Beyond the Horizon. This episode is The Woman Who Thinks Like a Cow. Now, this is one of the most powerful Horizon episodes, one of the most powerful science documentaries I've ever seen. One of the reasons I keep returning to it year after year and watching it again and again is because it is just so insightful, but also powerful as a personal description of how someone made so many discoveries in science and also about themselves, the two things being inextricably linked. The reason for this is the main focus of this video, Dr. Temple Grandin, who is an expert in both human and animal psychology and behaviour. Her descriptions of psychology applied to animals and humans is incredibly clear and insightful, in no small part due to her unique perspective on the field and her own experiences. This being the experience of someone with severe autism or Asperger's, depending on how you want to label it, albeit someone we would describe as a high-functioning individual within that group. This video largely speaks for itself, or perhaps I should say Temple Grandin largely speaks for herself and the field and the entire topic of interest in this science documentary. So I should probably just let the video speak for itself. However, I may chip in from time to time anyway. So without any more prevarication, let's just get straight into the video, The Woman Who Thinks Like a Cow.
See, there's like two main drives. You've got fear and you've got curiosity. They're kind of curiously afraid. A person laying on the ground is just something really weird, and as long as they don't move, they'll come up to you.
Dr. Temple Grandin is a legend in the kingdom of animal behaviour. She's known for her extraordinary understanding of the animal mind.
Not so threatening when I'm down.
Her specialist subject
Come on.
is cows.
She's capable of jumping escape. If she starts thinking about jumping, I'm going to let her out and let her get back with her friends.
Her followers believe Temple has a magical connection with animals. But she has a different explanation. She thinks her understanding comes from being born severely autistic.
My theory is that there are similarities between, my autistic mind and animal thinking. Fear is the main emotion in autism. I got the nervous system of a prey species animal. Fear is also the main emotion in an animal like this. Very, very high strung, looking for any little thing. before I started taking antidepressant drugs, I was in a constant state of panic attacks all the time. I was always looking for danger, always looking for, something that might be a threat.
Recognised today for her insights into the animal mind, it was Temple's insights into her own mind that first made her famous. 20 years ago, Temple caused a sensation when she published her first book, an autobiography.
The majority of people were shocked that a person with autism could write an autobiography.
It was the first time any autistic person had put into writing, or even into words, as far as we knew, what it felt like to be autistic.
All I can say is you inspire me.
Well, thank you very much.
In the world of autism, Temple's an international celebrity. Her life is a whirlwind tour of book signings, lectures, and guest speaking.
I think I'll just tell a little bit about myself. When I was a little kid, I had all of the full-blown symptoms of autism.
This is Temple's remarkable story, the story of her ongoing struggle with autism, a condition that makes other people and the realm of human relationships a mysterious and sometimes frightening place.
Well, this pig's from Denmark. That's from Chicago there. That's from Denmark. That sheep's from Australia. To be perfectly honest, this little, that came from England. Some, I don't remember.
Do you have a favourite animal?
Well, cattle's my favorite animal. You want to just, we're going to sit down and do something, or what do you want to do?
What would you normally do in an evening?
Phone calls, write letters, work on my book chapters. Those are all things I would normally be doing. Now, basically, I work most of the time. I might go to a movie.
What kind of films?
Oh, I want to go see that Wallace and Gromit or whatever it is. I want to go see that. That's the kind of movies I like.
And what kind don't you like?
Oh, sort of might say the relationship kind of movies. I find them very boring.
Temple was born in 1947. Her mother sensed from early on that her daughter was different. By the time Temple was 2, it was clear to everyone that something was very wrong. The doctors were at a loss. They didn't even have a name for her condition.
She still didn't talk. And she didn't smile, she didn't laugh. And when laughter finally came, it erupted out of her in wild spasms, along with spitting. And her father was furious. He said, "She's retarded." Well, then it got worse. Temple began to tear off the wallpaper. She began to defecate and smear it all over the wallpaper. Temple's father, I believe, wanted Temple institutionalized. He didn't say those words out loud to me, but it was in his actions.
In the 1940s, a child displaying the kind of symptoms that Temple had of emotional withdrawal and very, very little language or no language at all would have in all likelihood been placed in an institution and removed from their family.
It should be pointed out that medical care and science have both progressed a lot since the 1940s and 50s, but it is still surprising how slowly the fields of medicine and psychology attached to that have progressed, and how they until relatively recently remained in a fairly primitive state of understanding of their fields of study. But of course, this isn't just talking about a field of study, this is also a field of care, and I will return to this topic shortly.
To isolate her in an institution seemed like its own form of madness. No, I wasn't going to go there.
Give it to me.
But life was about to change for children like Temple, thanks to the work of two doctors, Leo Kanner in America and Hans Asperger in Austria. Each was unaware of the other's research, but their descriptions of the children in their care were strikingly similar.
There is from the start an extreme aloneness that, whenever possible, disregards, ignores, shuts out anything that comes to the child from the outside.
They have little ability to form friendships, have one-sided conversation, and show an intense absorption in a special interest.
Independently, Kanner and Asperger had both identified the same new psychological disorder, and remarkably, they both chose the same name to describe it: autism.
The term autism comes from auto, to refer to self or turning inward. So both of them use this term, and by using that term, we're focusing on the lack of interest in social interaction that seemed to characterize these groups of children.
Because of my inner world, the scenes in my childhood are vivid. Memories play like a movie on a big screen in my mind. I could sit on the beach for hours, dribbling sand through my fingers and fashioning miniature mountains. Each particle of sand intrigued me as though I were a scientist looking at it through a microscope.
At nearly 5 years old, and after 2 years of speech therapy, Temple finally learned to talk. But she still preferred to be alone.
Intensely preoccupied, I saw nothing, I heard nothing. People around me were transparent, and no sound intruded on my fixation.
Today, psychologists diagnose autism based on observations of a child's behaviours. The same kind of behaviours that Kanner and Asperger first wrote about 60 years ago.
What has changed in recent years is a recognition that autism covers a spectrum of disorders, from the very impaired, silent and aloof child to the perhaps highly intelligent adult who is very verbal, very fluent, but still has core social and communication problems.
Name is Grandin, Grandin.
People with autism seem to have difficulty understanding what's going on with other human beings. They don't read the facial expressions, they don't understand the tone of voice, and they don't understand that behind those, people have thoughts and feelings that can be different from one's own. And that makes people very puzzling for individuals with autism, and sometimes very scary. You can see why an individual with autism might prefer to study railway timetables or astronomy or some other facts that fit a neat and orderly regularity instead of the chaos that is the world of people.
What kind of magazines do you like reading?
Business magazines, science magazines. How about Discover magazine? That's sort of my taste in magazines.
How about all these women's magazines?
I never read those. They're a bore.
And what's boring about the women's magazines?
Well, I'm not particularly interested in cooking, so and I'm, reading about why their marriage failed. I just find that boring.
My experience of autism has led me to feel that there are two things we can't overestimate. One is how hard individuals with autism work to live in our world and to keep to our rules and to get by. And the second is how anxious most individuals with autism are, and the two things go hand in hand.
Oh, wait a minute, trick-or-treaters. Hello, how are you? Well, I've got something good. I got money from, I got a news crew here from the BBC in England, and I've got some foreign money from England.
Cool. Oh,
Okay, I got foreign money here from England.
Thank you.
Give each one of you 2 foreign coins from England. Okay, you're welcome.
Nobody else gives out foreign coins from England. That's better than candy. Give them foreign coins from England.
So tonight's Halloween?
Yeah, tonight's Halloween. Kids are out trick-or-treating. I made sure I turned on my lights so that I might get some trick-or-treaters.
And you liked Halloween when you were a kid? Or?
No, Halloween was my favorite holiday when I was a kid. Absolutely my favorite holiday.
Why is that?
I don't know. I like dressing up in costumes. I thought that was just really fun. It was something I liked doing. You know, when I was young, like in elementary school, kids like to do projects. You know, we'd go build the treehouse, go, you know, sail little toy boats in the brook or something. You know, you went out and you did projects, build these little boats and then go out and sail. But when you got into high school, it all became relationships. Well, I couldn't figure out, like, I remember, you know, the girls would scream when this one teacher came into the cafeteria. He was really handsome. I can remember them screaming over Ringo, you know, like ripping the grass out of the ground when Ringo had walked. I'm like, that's like totally ridiculous. Why would I want the grass he walked on? You know, and girls squealing when he was on the Ed Sullivan Show. I mean, I just didn't, you know, I go, yeah, he's cute, but I'm not going to roll on the floor and squeal.
Hasn't anybody made you want to roll on the floor and squeal?
No. I just wanted the kids to stop teasing me. That's all I could think about, and that was just miserable, let me tell you. Yes, and that, you know, that being directly attacked by them, yes, and that did make me upset. You better believe it. I mean, I've got emotions. My emotions are more like about a 10-year-old child's emotions. I can be happy, I can be sad, I can be angry, I can be scared. Fear is my main emotion. See, an awful lot of things I do, I'm just sort of avoiding problems. I think we got some more kids coming. Hi, I got some money from Europe for you.
Oh, I've been here before.
Yep, money from Europe. Want me just to drop it in there?
Yeah,
okay, great. All righty, okay.
Plagued by anxiety and panic attacks, much of Temple's childhood was deeply unhappy. But a cure for her autism seemed to be in sight. A cure born of one man's encounters in the most harrowing of places. Psychologist Bruno...
After liberation, the nightmares were practically nightly. Even today, I occasionally have dreams. And the dreams are always anxiety dreams that one doesn't make it out of the camps.
Settling in Chicago, Bettelheim became the director of a school for emotionally disturbed children, many of whom had been diagnosed with autism.
He started thinking about the behavior of prisoners in concentration camps that he had been in, and the kind of social withdrawal that they developed after a long period of time in what he called an extreme environment. He decided that children with autism, like the prisoners in concentration camps, must have also been subjected to an extreme environment in order to develop the symptoms that he saw in them.
Watching the children at the school, Bettelheim was convinced they had turned inwards to escape from something, or someone, very frightening in their lives. This theory led him to a disturbing conclusion.
Bettelheim took an idea of Freud's, that most mothers will occasionally unconsciously wish that the child had never been born, and he decided that children with autism must have experienced this in a very severe form, that they feared for their lives, that they were in mortal fear in response to their parents.
Infantile autism is the most severe psychotic disturbance of childhood known to man. I think in the case of these extremely disturbed children, not only nobody cared, but there was a wish that it would be much better if the child wouldn't live.
According to Bettelheim, autistic children felt completely unwanted and unloved. Their cold and distant refrigerator mothers, as they came to be known, were to blame for their child's autism.
We were turned over to a psychiatrist. And his first request was to see Temple's parents. I think he believed in Bettelheim. They thought, well, we have to see this mother. She must be bad news, because these mothers are driving their children crazy. When the psychiatrist accused me of being an hysteric, I didn't know what that meant. I asked another psychiatrist what it meant. And he said, well, in Freudian terms, it means a woman who wants a penis. I thought, well, there are a lot of things I wanted in life, but that's not one of them.
Bettelheim was a psychological care provider, not a scientist. Like other medical practitioners and other medical care providers, and psychological care being part of that field, he is not a scientist and is not trained in the scientific method necessarily. He's trained in care delivery and diagnosis of illness from the medical practitioner's perspective and methodology. He made observations of small numbers of peoples he had contact with and constructed an attractive theory based upon those observations coupled with his personal experiences, but not necessarily with the strict adherence to a scientific acquisition of data using significant numbers of sources and carefully controlled measures and outcomes. Unfortunately, the scientific community, not really the scientific community, the medical community, ran with his theory and assumed it was correct. Small numbers and case studies in medical research is one of the things that plagues medical research and distinguishes such research from actual scientific research in the field of medical science, be it the biomedical sciences, neurology and neuroscience, and other hard sciences which require acquisition of data in a controlled and rigorous manner. Fortunately, Bettelheim's theory was eventually overturned by an actual psychologist, as in a scientist in the field of psychology, as opposed to a psychological care provider or practitioner. And then other scientists like Temple Grandin further unpacked the features of the condition and greatly increased our understanding of both its causes and ways in which those people can be helped to live more productive and happy lives. But returning to the problems of medical and psychological practitioners being involved in the presentation and acquisition of supposed scientific knowledge in their fields, you might like to watch this SciShow video, Psychology in Trouble.
The doctors insisted that Temple herself could be cured with psychotherapy.
They were looking for the psychic injury. This is when I was maybe 7. You see, they were still into the psychology, into the psychoanalytic way of looking things back then. I mean, this was 50s.
Psychoanalysis was big then?
It was very big then.
And did you go to psychotherapy sessions?
Yeah, I did. It was a waste of time.
Temple continued to receive psychotherapy throughout her childhood and adolescence.
I thought if I could figure out my deep, dark psychological secrets, then I wouldn't be anxious anymore. Well, it didn't work. Psychoanalyzing my anxiety attacks did not work.
At 16, Temple finally found her own way to deal with her autism, in an unlikely place. Her mother suggested she spend the summer with her aunt, out on her ranch in Arizona. It was the beginning of a lifelong affinity with animals.
I was really scared to go out there because I had all these panic attacks all the time, so new things scared me. My mother kind of just forced me to go, and it turned out I absolutely loved it.
Down on the ranch, Temple spent hours watching the men handle the cattle. She became obsessed with one particular device, called a squeeze chute.
I got to see the squeeze chute working, and all they were doing was just vaccinate the animals. They weren't doing anything painful, just giving them their shots. They would go in, and this thing would clamp them on the head, and then the squeeze side would come in and squeeze them, hold them. Some calves got all excited, other calves just sort of went, and they just kind of relaxed. Wasn't all the calves that did that, just some of them did that. I thought, oh, I've got to try that.
And so you actually thought, you made that link, you thought, well, it makes them relax?
That's right, yeah, I made the link. Yeah, that's absolutely right. So then the next day I got my aunt to lock me in the squeeze chute, and everybody thought that was kind of weird.
So you got in it?
Yeah.
And then what happened?
No, I was in there for about half an hour, and then for about an hour afterwards I was calmer.
Home from her aunt's ranch, Temple realised she couldn't live without the therapeutic effects of the squeeze chute. So she built her own.
Well, you're going to see me get in here. I can't even here. See, now when I first get in it squeezes up quite a bit. See, it's just like the controls on the squeeze chute out the feet. It's the same kind of thing.
How often do you use this machine?
About once a week.
When you're particularly stressed?
Well, usually, I'm weighing an awful lot, so I've not been using it as much as I'd like to.
How long do you stay for?
20 minutes. Kind of relaxed feeling of being held. Helps you to have nicer thoughts.
Did you mean it sort of helps you to feel more affection towards it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, as a little kid, I wanted to feel a nice feeling being held, but it's just too much overwhelming stimulation.
So this was a...
Like a controller.
Today, a version of Temple's squeeze machine is used by clinics around the world.
Although the squeeze machine seems a very strange idea, It is in fact based on sound scientific theory. We know that light pressure touch, say a stroking of the skin, excites the sympathetic nervous system, which raises heart rate and raises respiration, whereas deep pressure touch actually lowers heart rate and lowers respiration. And what the squeeze machine is doing is producing controlled deep pressure touch, which then has a significant relaxing effect.
So what room is this? This is my office. Got 30 years of convention pictures up there.
Do you know where everything is?
Pretty much so. Not everything, but I kind of have like categories. So I gotta put all my business cards out on the wall, otherwise I don't know where they're at. This is all livestock handling and transport stuff and research stuff.
Able to control her anxiety at last, Temple began to achieve academically in a way no one ever thought she would. She graduated from high school and college, and inspired by her experiences on the ranch, began a master's degree in animal science. And whilst Temple was studying, so was a young, unknown psychologist. Bernard Rimland's interest in the field of autism began when his own son was diagnosed with the condition.
When Mark was 2 years old, I did take him to a child psychiatrist, and I was appalled to find that this child psychiatrist, who was very well respected, was totally immersed in the ridiculous psychoanalytic idea that it was the mother's attitude that had caused the child's problem.
Incensed by the doctor's verdict, Rimland set out to overturn the theory that the parents were to blame for their children's autism.
Every single article in any language that I could possibly find, I had either read or had read to me, so at the end of a few years I had been exposed to every bit of printed information that had ever been published on autism.
Buried in the archives were several accounts of twins with autism that caught Rimland's attention.
It occurred to me that if the psychiatrists were right, and that it was the mother's behavior toward the child that caused autism, then in the case of twins, she would have behaved the same way toward both of the twins, they were living in the same environment, and both twins would be affected.
But this wasn't the case. There were many examples where only one twin was affected. Only the genetically identical twins both consistently suffered from autism. His findings completely contradicted the idea that autism is caused by a parent's behavior.
There wasn't the slightest shred of evidence that autism was an emotional disorder, psychological disorder, and instead I realized that autism was a biological disorder that had to be studied from the standpoint of biology, not psychology.
Bernard Rimland is an actual scientist in the field of psychology, meaning he's a research scientist working in the field of psychology, not a medical practitioner in the field of psychology. Fortunately for the world. And thank goodness he spotted the pre-existing twins data, which began to lead him towards a greater understanding of the condition of autism and Asperger's as a condition with a genetic cause rather than a condition with some sort of psychiatric basis, with treatments stemming from the world of psychiatry.
Rimland's research implied that autism has a genetic, biological basis. When he published his work, it was the end of the old ideas and the beginning of a fresh era in the understanding of autism. Now modern brain scanning techniques are beginning to reveal what the biological cause of autism might be.
Okay, you ready to get started? Okay, great, here we go.
We spent the past 10 years studying the brain and autism with imaging, and it's clear this is a neurologic disorder. This is clearly a disorder that resides in brain abnormalities.
Professor Nancy Minshu's team have explored the autistic brain using a series of simple tasks that are difficult for those with autism.
These next two, they're shorter than the last one, so just try as hard as you can.
This is the autism group, and you'll notice there's more activation there. This is the control group, see that small?
Although not clear enough to give a diagnosis, these scans do reveal that the autistic brain seems to be structured differently.
Our theory about what's different about the brain in autism is that the different regions of the brain are not connected well. And what this means is that when they're asked to think, the regions can't talk to each other as well as they need to.
Imagine that the brain is a big corporate office building. Up at the top of the office building, you have the chief executive officer. That's the frontal cortex. Now that frontal cortex has got connections to all the different departments that are inside that office building. You've got the social department, that's sales. You've got the math department, finances. You've got a graphic design department to do your advertising. You have all these different departments. And white matter is the brain's communication wires between the different departments. It's sort of analogous to telephone connections, email connections, instant messaging connections between brain departments. What happens in autism? A lot of those connections don't get connected. Does that explain it?
Temple Grandin's description of the different segments of the human psyche and how they communicate with one another, with additional insights as to whether this works well or not so well in the mind of someone with autism and Asperger's versus somebody without, is brilliantly clear and imaginative, and shows just what a genius Temple Grandin is in her own field and in understanding herself.
The effects of this miswiring fundamentally change the way people with autism experience the world.
What Temple Grandin does so well is describe this alternate reality that many people with autism live in. Although they live in the same world as the rest of us, they experience it in a very different way. They hear sounds differently. They see light very differently. And what Temple does is give us an insider's view of this world and how it affects people with autism on a day-to-day basis.
Even today, sudden loud noises such as a car backfiring will make me jump and a panicky feeling overwhelms me. Loud, high-pitched noises such as the motorcycle sound are still painful to me.
Much of the behaviour of people with autism is often an attempt to escape from situations that they find distressing, to avoid sounds, to avoid lights that make them upset and anxious and distressed.
One of the things that can be a huge barrier to employment in college is sensory sensitivity problems. I mean, it's impossible to socialize, it's really in a mess if you can't tolerate a normal office work environment. If this doesn't stop me soon, I'm going to go back there and make this. Now, what is back here? It's making some noise. God, what is making this terrible noise? God, it's driving me crazy. Maybe you can unplug. Thank you so much. Well, what that was, it was a half-dead, empty Coca-Cola cooler, and we found a guy back there, and he unplugged it, and there's something wrong with it. I mean, that's just ridiculous. It sounds like a bunch of cicadas going off. But those are the sort of things that can really be a problem.
Temple's sensory problems follow her into every area of her life.
You have problems with what you wear?
Oh, there's a lot of things I can't wear against my skin. I have a lot of problems with pants. Shirts, I can put t-shirts on under them. That solves the problem with shirts. But pants, well, there's only certain things I can wear against me. My skin will drive me crazy.
What do you mean? What does it feel like?
Itch.
And that's been like that since you were little?
Always been that way. It's really nuts.
And is that something to do with your autism?
Yeah. It's part of sensory sensitivity problems. Yeah, that has to do with autism.
You wear quite similar things?
Yeah, I get used to things that feel a certain way. And I never like dresses because you couldn't stand feeling my skin touching skin. These things just drive me crazy.
And so what happens when you get new clothes?
You have to wash all new underwear. Has to be washed a whole bunch of times. No, a new underwear gets worn until it's washed. Socks I can wear without washing. Other things, they gotta be washed.
Because if you don't?
You break out in rashes, itch. And a lot of mothers tell me to buy their kids' clothes at the thrift store because they're nice and well broken in and soft.
Do you think some of these sort of sensitivity problems might explain what parents sometimes think of their children being naughty?
Some of it is, yes. Like if you take them into a large supermarket and the child goes berserk, that's sensory overload. Sound, light, and smell, sensory overload. Understood? They feel like they're inside the speaker at a rock and roll concert.
Because the sound so
It's so overwhelmingly loud. That's right.
So if you're a parent of a child with autism, you have to think about some of these things.
You have to. Well, there's things you can do sometimes to help reduce the sound sensitivity. Auditory training. Hello?
During her 20s, Temple began learning how to live with her autism and its many side effects.
Where are you going?
You got too many in the crowd. See, now you got no room for the turn.
The more time she spent on her aunt's ranch, the more she learned about how to handle animals.
She starts thinking about jumping. I'm going to let her out and let her get back with her friends. She could jump the skate if she wanted.
Skate?
Yes. She's a big cow and she's capable of jumping the skate. It's just something I'd rather not have her do.
Why? Because she could hurt herself?
Yeah, hurt us.
But as time went by, Temple began to realise that she could relate to animals in a way that other people couldn't. She came to see that she actually experiences the world much as an animal does.
My theory is that there are similarities between my autistic mind, at least my type of autism, and animal thinking. Sensory-based thinking. It's thinking in sounds, thinking in touches, thinking in pictures. Emotions are more simple, less complex emotion. You got happy, sad, fearful, and angry. Fear is the main emotion in autism. Fear is also the main emotion in an animal like this.
Temple was convinced that it would be a long time before anyone else took her ideas seriously. At 25, Temple left college, determined to work in the cattle industry. One of her first jobs was designing restraining equipment for cows. It led her to their final destination, the slaughterhouse. She had no idea that one day she would have the billion-dollar meat industry at her feet. In the beginning, she had a hard time getting accepted, and this time, it had nothing to do with her autism.
Oh, things are macho. The things that people are suing about today, sexual, harassment, nothing compared to what I went through. I was at a feed yard in Arizona, and they put, from castrating bulls, put bull testicles all over my car, so I just threw them off and threw them away, and I don't make a big deal out of it, because that's what they wanted.
She came into our industry not only as being a member of the opposite sex, but also as being somebody that was pushing things that we'd never done in the past. She was talking animal welfare, animal behavior.
Temple was horrified by what she saw in the slaughterhouses.
They were all bug-eyed, and they were falling down all over the place, and animals would get down, and the rhino would be jumping on top of it. I mean, it was just terrible.
The cattle handlers had always assumed the cows at a slaughterhouse were distressed because they sensed they were going to their deaths. But Temple wasn't so sure.
So I'd watch cattle being handled at the slaughter plant, and then I'd go to the feedlot and watch cattle being handled when they were just getting vaccinated, and they behaved exactly the same way. If they knew they were going to be slaughtered, they ought to be behaving much more wild at the slaughter plant than at the ranch or at the feedlot.
Temple became convinced there must be something else upsetting the cattle.
I noticed that sometimes the cattle would move to a handling facility really well, and other times they would move to a handling facility really poorly. And I started getting down the chutes to see what were the cattle seeing. Other people at the time, back in the 70s, they thought I was crazy, getting down in the chutes to see what cattle were seeing. They thought I was absolutely nuts.
What she found took the whole industry by surprise.
Okay, you see here how you got a little piece of a plant there in the middle of the alley? That's the sort of thing that will make cattle stop. Just that little thing right there. There's a little strip of something right there. Something that small is the kind of thing that will make cattle just stop. If that strip right there was at the entrance of the chute up there in the plant, they'd turn back and they would not go in.
To Temple, it was obvious that these tiny details were crucial, but her colleagues were unconvinced. They couldn't understand why anyone else hadn't noticed them before.
I think that people with autism have an ability to see detail that the rest of us lack. So often parents will say, well, my child can spot a piece of thread on patterned carpet that I would never see. They're able to pick out visually or in sound tiny details the rest of us miss. The Temple uses her eye for detail in her amazing work, fits absolutely with what we know of autism. Many of the talents in autism, which are common, have to do with noticing details and being aware of features in the environment the rest of us just take for granted or don't even notice anymore.
Eventually, Temple got the chance to put her ideas into practice.
There was a big feed yard out in Kansas, and the cattle would not go through the handling facility, and it was a modern handling facility, and the cattle refused to go through it. And they were going to tear it down and build another one. And all that was wrong was the building was too dark. So I went in there, and I opened up the door on the side of the building to let more light in, and then the cattle just went right in. See, cattle are afraid to go into a place that's really dark.
So how much money do you reckon save this guy?
Oh, if they'd rebuilt the whole handling facility, I mean, that could have been, a couple $100,000 easy. I would like to talk today about animal handling in meat plants.
Buoyed by her success, Temple set up her own troubleshooting business, and the work flooded in.
Here's a really bad location for a hydraulic pump. It's right next to the entrance of the restrainer system. And if this pump goes ee, that's the kind of noise that sounds like a distress call.
Today, more than half of all cattle slaughtered in the US go to their deaths in equipment designed by Temple.
They come up the main alley from the yard. They go around the round crowd pen. It's got a 3.5 meter radius, round crowd pen. If you look right in, there's a door. You get stunned about 20 feet inside that door. And there's no mooing. Back in the old days, there used to be a lot of mooing. They're just walking right in there. They're going in really quiet. Don't hear any mooing and bellowing.
Temple's designs have transformed animal welfare and earned her the respect of the entire industry.
Temple has that innate ability to blank out her day-to-day life and actually try to think on the level of an animal that's in that situation.
It's a unique skill that has made her famous. In today's meat industry, Temple Grandin has rock star status.
Oh, I'm doing okay. How about yourself? Hi. Good to see you.
Terry Stokes.
Oh, hi. Good to see you. Going just fine. Fine, good to see you. Hi. Come by your big...
In a man's world, she's the king.
They can go up to 33-inch wide chute just fine. And big bulls can go up there. Okay.
Today, the US government rely on Temple to help them set and monitor their cattle welfare standards.
Okay.
But it's not just cows. Temple gets calls from people with all sorts of animal problems.
I had somebody come to me the other day and says, my horse goes berserk. Well, I don't know what that means. Where did it happen? When does it happen? Details matter.
These days, her clients range from zoo owners to dog trainers.
The thing is, don't pat, stroke. Yeah, don't go. And if you don't do tickle touches. Some people just pat their horses and the animal interprets that here.
Her book on animal behavior has spent weeks on the bestsellers list.
She has been on numerous news stations in 2020, Larry King Live, Prime Time. What else, Temple?
Oh, it's nice to meet you.
Hi, nice to meet you.
She's written this fantastic book. It's called Animals in Translation, Using the Mysteries of Autism to Decode Animal Behavior.
Cattle actually have diaphragmatic vision. They're the most sensitive to television.
It's taken her nearly 60 years, but the child who couldn't speak has become the voice of wisdom for many. Her insights have inspired whole new areas of autism research. But for Temple, it's her day-to-day work in the field of animal welfare that remains her greatest achievement.
Anne gave me that. That's what the stairway to heaven was.
what was the actual Stairway to Heaven?
Stairway to Heaven was a ramp at the meatpacking plant that the cattle walked up. And it had steps because cattle can walk up steps easier than they can walk up on cleats. In fact, cattle steps make them this high and about that long, and cattle can really easily walk up that.
So did you call it the Stairway to Heaven, or was that somebody else?
Well, it was something I was out there with construction crews, and they were kind of calling it that after that Led Zeppelin song. And then I got to thinking, that's what we are building. When the place, where you kill the animal isn't just business. It isn't just business until after they're dead. And we have a responsibility to treat the animal right and make sure they don't suffer. That's just really super important. Things I've been working on, I've been trying to just make things better for cattle in a real practical sort of way. I'm not into ideology. I'm into what are real practical things that make improvements on the ground. That's what matters to me.
Nowadays, nobody doubts that Temple gets results, even if her methods are a little unusual.
What happened there?
What?
What happened there?
Some little thing scared them. I don't know what. They were licking me, they were kissing me right on the mouth. All right, now you go do it.
Really?
Yes.
You gonna come with me?
I'll come get my hat.
What they got?
Look at them both go for my hat.
Why do they like the hat?
It's just something strange there. I can tell you, lay that microphone out there and they'll eat that furry thing. Okay, so we're all three gonna lay down now.
How is he chewing my feet?
Boys go to the back and the feet first.
What is it you love about cattle?
They're very peaceful animals. Cattle can get scared, they can get agitated. But if you just let them come to you, they're very, very peaceful.
Next week on Horizon, the true story of the genius sperm bank. One man's dream to save humanity by using the sperm of the world's cleverest men.
Yes, that will be fine.